So this next part of our notes is helping to prepare us for solving equations, which is where we're headed next. And so we are going to practice simplifying expressions. So the first part of this is just understanding what are the properties for simplifying expressions. So if you look inside, you will see some of the things you should already be familiar with. You should know that if you are trying to simplify subtraction, you can do the same thing by adding the opposite. The definition of division is if you're dividing two numbers, it is the same thing as multiplying that number by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of b is 1 over b, and that will help you cancel things from side to side. So if you're trying to simplify equations for adding and subtracting, you use the opposite sign. For multiplying and dividing, you use reciprocals. We've already talked a little bit about the distributive property. That happens anytime you have parentheses in an equation. This is kind of very basic. Obviously, if you multiply a number by 0, you get 0. And then multiplying by -1, and this is important, actually changes the value of the sign on that number. The opposite of a sum is what happens when there is a negative symbol in front of parentheses. Essentially, it means a -1. And when it distributes with each term inside the parentheses, they both change to opposite signs. If it was a difference, so there was a subtraction sign, where does that subtraction sign go? Well, that goes with the b value, or the b term. Again, this is distributing a negative, so that means that the a term is going to change to negative, and the b term, if you do a negative times a negative, it gives you positive. So you'll notice that they kind of rearranged them. We do have a positive b and a negative a. They just put it with the positive number first. The opposite of a product means to multiply two numbers. If it becomes negative, that means that if the answer is a negative, that means that either the a or the b could be a negative number. Same idea. And then we've already talked about this, the opposite of an opposite. The opposite of something that is negative will change to a positive. Okay? All right, so now we're going to talk about how to combine like terms. So you always have to simplify anytime you see parentheses first before you can combine like terms. And then you have to remember, what does it mean to multiply like terms? Well, that means that you draw lines in front of each term to separate them, and then you're looking for common terms. And common terms are the ones that have like variables, including the exponents. And then when you're combining like terms, think about it as adding the terms. And then you can simplify each group of like terms into a single term. So let's look at this first example. I'm going to go ahead and distribute this y. Y times 1 is still y. Y times y, though, is y squared. I had a couple of students this week who thought that y times y is 2y. 2y would be made not from multiplying, but from adding the two y's. I'm not doing that on this one. On this one, I am multiplying the y times the y. So that's going to be the y term being squared, well, multiplying by itself twice. Then I have minus 3y squared, and then look, I have a negative in front of parentheses, which is the equivalent of -1. So when I distribute that, I'm going to get negative y and -1. So for adding like terms, I'm going to cut up my terms and look for terms that are alike. Well, I see 1y squared, that's what that means, and -3y squared. 1 plus -3 is -2, so I have -2y squared. Then you should see that the two y's, I have positive y and negative y. Well, those are going to cancel. So the only term that's remaining now is a -1. So my answer is -2y squared minus 1. And then the second one, again, we're just distributing. So a times a is a squared. A times -b is -a times b. b times b on the other one is b squared. And b times negative a, this is where a lot of people get confused. They want to write negative ba, which is correct. It's not incorrect. The problem is when you get ready to combine like terms, you're probably not going to say that these are like terms because they look different to you. But I want you to remember that we are dealing with multiplying. When you multiply two numbers, it doesn't matter what they are, the order of them does not matter. So this is also the same thing as negative a times b, which matches this term. So it would make more sense for us to put it as the same order so you can actually recognize them as like terms. So then I notice that I have an a squared, but I have no other a squared terms. So I'm just going to write a squared. I have negative ab and negative ab, and remember I'm adding these. Negative 1 plus negative 1 does not cancel. That's negative 2ab. And then this b squared has nothing to add with because there's no other b squared terms. So my final answer is a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So this is going to help us as we move forward now.